This week's episode is brought to you by MediaZilla and MusicBed. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the How to Film Weddings podcast. My name is John Bunn, and do I have a good episode for you today. I'm joined by Sam Jacobson, one of the smartest people on the planet, to talk all about the different buyer types for our wedding films. But before we get into this episode, talking about these buyer types, I wanted to remind you of our howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing link. If you head over to howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing, you will see a list of curated and vetted vendors to outsource your wedding films. It's getting to be that time of the year where we're starting to see some backlog and we're starting to get behind. And if you don't have an outsourcing partner, this is the place to check. I don't know if you've noticed, if you post in a Facebook group or our Facebook group looking for an editor, immediately you're going to get spammed with 20 or 30 DMs, not knowing if people can edit or if they're just spam. This is your solution. howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing. You're going to see people that we trust, that we've vetted, that we even work with for our brands. So check it out, howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing. And without further ado, here's our episode with Sam Jacobson from Ideaction. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the one and the only, the biggest brain I know, Sam Jacobson, back on the How to Film Weddings podcast. It's been a minute. Hi, Sam. Welcome to the show. How you been?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, John. I love being here. I love chatting with you. You know, we do it so often, but it's fun for other people when we get to hit record and then share the conversation. So Thanks for having me on in a formal discussion.
You bet. Yeah, we'll try to keep it PG this time. No, we talk a lot. We've become good friends over the last 3-4 years and spent time in person with each other. You're my personal business coach. And I wanted to bring you back on the podcast. It's been a while. And so if people are like, who the heck is this gorgeously handsome man with this dome? This is so smart. He's just so smart, guys. I can just feel it. No, if they don't know who you are, give us a little elevator pitch, what you do, where you're based, kind of what does your life, your business look like right now?
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I'm in Washington State. San Juan Islands is where I'm located. Go to a map and look it up. Actually, even better, plug it into Google and then hit images and you'll be like, wow, that's incredible. I've been up here for about 20 years. I got my start in the wedding business in 2006 after a dozen years in restaurants. I got plucked out of the restaurant that I was working in because the event manager quit on short notice and the GM needed somebody to run the wedding that was going on that afternoon. So I got thrown into the fire and I loved it. I've been going for the last 18 years now. I've worked in venues selling directly to couples. I've managed operations for a planning, design, decor company, taught events for 2 years out of Texas. I was the director of operations. And for the last almost 8 years now, I have run my company, Ideaction, with my wife, Katie. And I do business coaching, sales coaching. We have a mastermind. My wife heads up our website design and copywriting team. We have 7 people working full time doing good work for clients in the wedding industry. And I love sharing information about buyer psychology and pricing and sales and conversion copywriting and business strategy. You name it, I'm happy to have a conversation about it. So whatever comes up today is going to be a real treat for me. Hopefully you guys get something out of it too.
Yeah, I love that. And after having been around you, I love surrounding myself with people like you because every time I talk to you, you're like, I was just reading this book. I'm taking this class. I'm getting my second doctorate in being awesome or whatever it is that you're doing. You're so studious and so like in a world where most people are getting bite-sized bits of information, headlines on TikTok and Instagram and whatever, you've like gone the extra mile to really understand the psychology of buyers and have really found that niche. You know, you've got your copywriting and your sales side of things, your coaching, your business coaching, but you're really great when it comes to the actual understanding of human beings, the way that we relate to one another, the way we buy things. And I want to dig in today on that subject a little bit. Why don't you, before we get into that, give me a little rundown of like your background when it comes to the education that you've poured, like what you do for your education, because you're not just reading headlines. You're digging deep. You're reading all the time. You're part of different classes. So what does that look like for you? What are your credentials to be my business coach?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I think, most interestingly, I am the child of two therapists. I think that helps explain a lot. Not that I know how to do anything with therapy, but, talking about emotions and trying to understand behavior and finding ways to improve oneself has been fundamental to who I am. I will say, this is not speaking to my credentials, although I graduated, I think 6th or 5th in my class in high school and won all sorts of scholarships to college. I actually was at the time proud to not have read a single book when I was in high school. I did not read at all. In fact, I wouldn't even watch the movies. I was so anti-education. I just did what I needed to do to get through and have my parents keep off my back. But I went away in college, took a gap year after I nearly flunked out, and found a love of reading. And I've been a big reader ever since. Having lived on an island since college, for the most part, I've had to find virtual mentors. And books have been a big part of that. I read, I don't know, maybe like a book a week or so on average. I read exclusively nonfiction. I have attended workshops and conferences to make myself better. During the pandemic, I enrolled in an applied behavioral economics program at Texas A&M University. I think they had the certificate in the mail, is what they've told me. And it was basically the intersection of psychology with marketing, sales, and pricing. And so I've had a very fruitful education over the last 3+ years in how to tap into the way that people make decisions and the way that the emotional brain works when making non-conscious choices, and then applying that in a practical way for people in the wedding industry, which is what I focus on exclusively. So it's almost like a niche within a niche, and something that I feel is incredibly helpful throughout many different parts of the business.
Yeah. And I draw a lot of inspiration when I'm around you. It's like I feel like I just through osmosis get smarter because just like you're so smart you don't even know it. It's just like the way you're communicating. It's like I'm gonna add that word to my vocabulary because that's a word smart people use that aren't from.
You are too kind. You are too kind, and you're funny too, John. You've always been a comedian.
I do see a career in that in the future. I'll timestamp this in case I ever make that happen. But it's intriguing to me because I came across you during the days of Clubhouse, the weeks of Clubhouse that it existed.
The weeks, mere weeks, like the 13 and a half weeks.
The literal days of Clubhouse during the pandemic, and you were putting out a course, and we had some mutual friends that had helped us put out courses, and I was like, who is this guy with this gravelly, beautiful voice? He's so like, this is information that's like legit. You can tell when somebody is like a business coach and a life coach, but they have no life experience or business experience. And it's like, I've done $12 million of sales through, this company and this much. And I'm just like, okay, who is this person? And slowly approached you like, I don't know if this is one of those business gurus that's going to like, charge me $50,000. And the more that I've gotten to know you, the more that it's just, you've shown that it's like, no, your heart is to really help people with this thing that either comes naturally to you or that you've built and done so long that it is natural. And you mentioned it being the son of, two therapists, your emotions, understanding your behavior, and finding ways to improve oneself. I started listening to your podcast. We've had you on the podcast. We started, and I hired you and your team in 2021 or 2 to do the copywriting for my website, as well as helping me build my ideal buyer avatar. And I want to dig in because I think our listeners, a lot of us, we're doing the things, we're posting on social media, we're editing our films, we're shooting, we're doing all the stuff, and we're finding crickets, and we feel like there's something missing. It's like, why am I not able to charge more? What is wrong with my website? And the more I dug into what you were teaching, the more that I saw a correlation. So after we hired you, you started talking about, well, your ideal buyer is a relator, or your buyer type is, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What is this buyer type that you, the more I was around you, I was like, oh, this is stuff that Sam has put together. This is like not in a book that you can go find on the shelf yet. This is not on, what is the, and after having hired you and your team, and after learning who my buyer types were, that's whenever everything changed in the John Bunn Films brand. I launched my website. I was $8,500 starting price. The day that I launched, I raised it to $12,500. And now I'm at $18,500 starting, and I'm booking weddings in the $25,000 to $30,000 range, on average $22,000 to $25,000. And it all started with me having that clarity of knowing my buyer types. So what is this concept even of buyer types? How does it relate to wedding filmmakers, wedding professionals? Why do we need to care about our buyer types?
Yeah, I mean, so much there, John, because I think it's fundamental to human connection. We human beings want to connect with each other pretty much more than anything else that we want in life. It's a survival skill. We want to be accepted by the group. We are social creatures, and it allows us to not just survive but thrive. And one of the challenges, I think, in the wedding industry is that we feel like what it is that we're selling is so focused on the product, the creative output that we have. But Maya Angelou, going back to her very famous quote about people not remembering what you did or you said, but remembering how you made them feel, that effort that we have to put forth is something that we can get better at, and that communication can be improved. We can choose to make people feel amazing if we focus on it. And the kind of sales techniques and general sales approach and the understanding about different buyer types is really founded on communication improvements that you can make, because it's up to you if you want to connect with people. You can't trust that they're going to know how to connect with you. You've got to reach out and connect with them. I 10 years ago was not as good as I am now, although I'm still improving. I was in need of some help with communicating with my team as a manager. I have sales background, but I actually have more operations experience than I do sales background. And so I realized that if I wanted to get better at what I did as a manager, as a leader of people, I needed to differentiate and lead people, manage people based on who they are, not on what I wanted done. And so I hired a coach. She taught me about different personality types and different needs that each one of those personality types had. And I remember thinking, well, this is really helpful for my operations work, but boy, oh boy, what if I applied this to booking couples? And so I took kind of the core principles of it and transformed it into these 4 different buyer types, which I gave names of relator, analyzer, boss, and dreamer. And essentially, it's a predictive behavior model that you can use to categorize characteristics or traits that you see in people, and you can take some of the clues that you pick up on to then interpret or predict what it is that they're going to do in a certain situation when it comes to buying your product or service. And so I've come up with these profiles of characteristics and traits, and then built on what it is that you can do to connect with them and trigger buyer behavior in a positive way for your services, whatever it is that you do: planning, videography, photography, mid-market, premium, luxury, ultra luxury. It's less about what you do and how much it costs than it is who you're selling to. And once you know that secret, that's when the doors open, like you said.
Yeah, and it's so good. I was literally writing notes. Every time I'm on a call with Sam, I just get my notepad out and start writing notes. And you'll learn that the more you're around Sam. Like, I literally make sure I have a pad and paper if we're going to be in the same room together. It's just like, let me get that down. So I've heard a lot of people even in my close circles be like, yeah, I got on the call with that couple and they literally just said, well, what are the prices? Or they literally said, like, well, just what's bottom line? What's this going to cost me? And they were like, spent the next 30 minutes telling them, showing them the value or whatever. And I'm sitting there going, you're dealing with a boss type. They're not trying to be rude. They're just trying to get the numbers because they're ready to book you. They're ready. They just tell me what this is going to cost. I literally had a landscaping guy come out a couple days ago around my pool. We're doing some new rocks and stuff. And he came out and he's like trying to beat around the bush of like the price. And I'm like, I don't care what the price is. I just want it done right. And I want it done with this quality. This is what my wife wants. I have the money. I'm ready. And I was like, well, what is, just give me a range of what this is. This going to be 2,000, 5,000, 1,000, 20,000? I don't care what it is. And he couldn't give me, like, he was so uncomfortable.
So frustrating, right?
And I'm like, in that situation, I am definitely a boss type of purchaser. Mm-hmm. And like, if he would have said 5,000, it's like, cool, I'll get you a check. Like, and I know he had to do some like number crunching and things like that, but I finally got it out of him. Like, well, every ton of rock is this much. And it's like, so, and I'm doing math and I'm like, so somewhere between like 4,000 and 6,000. He's like, I don't know, maybe. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, we're good to go on that. And he's like, oh, okay. But I think a lot of us
took all the pressure off of him finally.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not trying to
breathe.
I don't want to call another person. I don't want to talk to another person, and some people like my wife are an analyzer. They want to read every review on every single, like my wife was buying blankets the other day for our bedroom and she's texting me like, what do you think about this one? It's fine. It's great.
It looks great. I love it. Do you
what
like
about this
it? I
one?
love it.
It's great. Well, that one's $36 more. I don't care. It doesn't, like, if we pay $36, we don't have to have this conversation. We could do anything else. And again, I want to be talking and having a conversation with my wife, but like she will painstakingly go through all the reviews and say, well, this one's this much, or when we had a baby, it was like, well, this stroller, this stroller, like we had so many strollers and so many hours spent on strollers. And I'm just like, pick the best one, like just buy the best one, the most expensive. I don't care if it's more. And I know not everybody has that leisure, but understanding buyer types, bringing it back to wedding filmmaking or, planning or whatever you do, how can we understand these 4 different buyer types? We've got, you said relator, analyzer, boss, and dreamer. How can we understand those when it comes to who our brand is, or how can we identify maybe 1 or 2 of these? Like, what clues are we looking for? How do we pull from that and say, cool, I like knowing buyer types. What does that actually mean for us?
Yeah. Well, it's great. You mentioned the, some of the characteristics of the analyzer. It sounds like your wife, and boss, which you've got some of that in you too. I think the simplest way, and this is the way that I would start trying to understand it, is that, we all filter the world in different approaches. Some people want to know or feel one thing versus another, and that's the biggest priority that they have. The relator buyer type is interested in meaningful connections with other people. That is how they filter the world, through relationships. The analyzer filters the world through information. They want to know about something, and the hopes for that are that they can reduce the risk of whatever choice it is that they're making. The boss type, action oriented, right? Like, hey, friend, I'm ready to build the wall around my pool. Here's the check. When can you start? Right? The boss just wants to get stuff done. They want a good outcome, and they're very results driven. The dreamer is really focused on ideas and opportunities, possibilities, and ultimately they want to create something amazing that people are like, wow, that's so cool. So when you go through and you think about your business and what it is that you want to attract, you can start creating content and guiding people to see the type of information or experience or results or ideas that they're looking for. And that can translate into, a number of different, opportunities for you in the marketing and sales, which I'm sure we'll dig into. But, bottom line is, when you know what it is that somebody wants most, you can then start focusing the conversation and guiding the experience to highlight those things rather than other things that they may not care about as much.
Yeah, it's really good. And I like what you said about like we all filter the world through different approaches. And I think some of us are, like you said, whenever you were the manager of people, a lot of managers only filter the world through themselves, and they're bad managers, and you hate working for them because they don't empathize with you and your experiences and your life and what you're going through. And so when we filter the world through different ways and we understand that different people are filtering things differently, it helps you. Like, for instance, I mainly am working with high net worth individuals, mainly the bride and her affluent mother that want to create an experience for their friends and family, and they want it to be unique. They want autonomy. And understanding these things about them changes the way I communicate to them. I'm dreaming with them. I'm saying, well, we could do this. We could go out on this boat and we could do a boat night. And they're like, we could? I'm like, yeah, I'll fly the drone. It'll be awesome. And I literally just did that. And it's like, they added an extra day and $3,500 worth of coverage for 2 hours for me to go out on a boat and get incredible footage and to say I'm on a boat. I said it so many times. It was great. But it's like they want to dream with me. And if dad gets on the call, most of the time I know that he is more of the boss type, and I'm not just immediately he's on the call and I'm like, the price is this. I'll cut you a deal. I'll do whatever. But I'm picking up clues. If he's like, well, what's this going to run me? I'm not going to fiddle fart around. Sorry about my language. And
so naughty, John.
I'm not going to fiddle fart around and be like, well, let me run you through these 20 slides. Nothing worse than taking a boss type through a presentation. They're probably better than you at sales anyway. And if you can confidently look them in the face and be like, hey, this is why it's this much. I'm better than, like, I'm the best for this reason. I charge this much for this reason. This is what it's going to cost you. And I like you. So here's what I'm going to also do for you. I want to throw this in. I'm going to do this. Your daughter's sweet. I know you get to do this once to eliminate, any potential frustration. This is my guarantee for you, or whatever it is. He lights up instead of like that timid salesperson that's just like, well, I don't know how much the rock's going to cost. I don't know. It's like, and so filtering the world through a different approaches, I keep coming back to the relator filters it differently than the analyzer or the boss or the dreamer. And so my next thought would be, what are some clues that help you understand these types of, I'm talking to, because I will be talking to you and you're like, well, yeah, you're this kind of person. And like you read my mail and it's like, hey, stop it. Quit doing that. Because you're doing it in real time. You're this person, aren't you? And I'm like, yes. And you're like, are you Enneagram this? And I'm like, yes. And it's like, okay, I know exactly what you're going to tell me. And I'm like, stop reading and you're like, that's so an Enneagram 3 of you to do that. And I'm like, you're doing it again. So clues.
I just did that with a client. I was on a one-on-one call. There was actually one-on-two. I was on with the husband and wife team. And I had been on for like 20, 25 minutes. And the wife said something that triggered a conversation where I was like, oh yeah, well, I bet, your husband is like this, that, and the other thing. And he doesn't like this and he loves doing this. And he may say he's good at this, but he doesn't really love it. And she was like leaning in. She goes, oh my God, my husband. It's like you're married to him. Because
you're very good at it.
It's not, I've been working on it for a long time. But what I will say is that it's not perfect, but there are approaches that you can take, clues that you can pick up on, and a hypothesis that you can then form and then continue to test out and refine over the course of the buyer's journey. And, you can pick up on clues from email inquiries. How much content they share in the open form field of your contact form. When you ask them like, tell me more about your wedding. And if they write, a novel about how they met and, who's going to be there and what their current emotional state is about, planning their wedding in general, boom, that's a relator. They're sharing their feelings. They're wanting to connect with you. They're talking about relationships that they have with their fiance. If on the other hand, you get an inquiry and it's all about the look, feel, and vibe of the wedding and what kind of style they want and what they loved about your film and that they saw you in, some kind of, online blog or publication, then you can probably guess that it's going to lean towards a dreamer who's inquiring because of the clues that you pick up on. So, the ways that you identify them are through the clues in the inquiry form and the email correspondence, on the discovery call, early on, all I'm trying to do is identify and pinpoint what kind of buyer am I working with? And then once I know that, I can then shift the sales process and what it is that I'm communicating to them. So, email is a good way to start, but it's really in the discovery call. The discovery call, the first, few minutes is, for me at least, really focused on trying to identify who am I talking to. And I'm going to pay attention to the words that they're using, like, I think or I feel, going to pay attention to how fast they talk, how loud they talk, going to pay attention to what they choose to talk about. And I'm going to either confirm or update my hypothesis. And then once I feel good, I'm going to try to pivot the conversation whenever it's appropriate to then start the actual discovery part of the conversation.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And I've seen you do it, like, I don't know if you'd meant to be doing it out loud, but especially when we were together, I think in Palm Springs at our mastermind retreat, where you that was the first time we were in person together. And so you were doing a discovery call with me sitting on a couch at an Airbnb, like, so what about this situation? I'm like, well, this. And you're like, what? Okay, so that means and I was like, stop it, Sam. You know me too well for just sitting down next to me. Let's stop it. But it's a practiced thing. It's a thing where once you understand there are different buyer types, you understand that it's like, the inquiry is, the novel being written, they're telling you their emotions, who's going to be there, all that stuff. It's like, oh, this is a relator. Now I know how to shift my conversation, and I'm working on it. I'm learning it. I feel like I naturally am a really good salesperson, but it's because I am doing some of these things subconsciously. You've put a definition on it and helped me kind of smooth out the rough edges, where it's like, oh, that's why. Like, I've learned through the scars on my on my back about, like, oh, when you deal with a boss type like this, you're going to get your head ripped off. Or if when you deal,
it's so true.
You deal with an analyzer and you don't give them the details, that they need, that you're not going to book them or whatever. And, different filmmakers, different educators or photographers or whatever are like, you should do this on your, you should give them their prices up front. You should do this up front. You should. And most of the time when someone gives a finite, you should be doing this, it's because they are filtering through their point of view.
That's right. I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's so true. We tend to project onto our ideal client how it is that we like to buy, and we then assume that, well, doesn't everybody like it that way too? And that's just not always the case. I was giving a presentation in Dallas in November last year, and I was talking about how there is no luxury buyer that works for everybody. And not just, different fields, or different markets, but, there are different buyer types within the luxury segment. And I put up a slide with the 4 different buyer quadrants, the relator, analyzer, boss, and dreamer. And I put in 4 billionaires. I put in Oprah Winfrey as the relator. I put in Bill Gates as the analyzer, Elon Musk as the boss, and Kim Kardashian as the dreamer. And my point was that all of those celebrities have billions of dollars, and they all throw big parties, but you wouldn't market to nor sell to them in the same way, or at least without finding success. And so what I find in the wedding industry is that videographers or anybody in any field tend to sell in the way that is most natural for them. And then they tend to provide advice to people saying, hey, you should do it this way too, because it's been successful for me. And yeah, I mean, that may work with that buyer type. We tend to find success with people who are like us, and that's why they become our ideal clients. But you can't always get ideal clients to inquire. You know, your inbox is like a bell curve. It's going to have mostly, you know, good or potentially good clients. It's going to have a handful of really crappy ones and a handful of really amazing ones. And, you know, if you get to be selective enough where you only have to work with the really amazing ones, congratulations to you. That's awesome. I love that. But my experience is that 98% of the wedding professionals have to pick less than ideal clients some of the times. And that means that you have to be good at selling to less than ideal clients, which typically means selling to people who are not like you. And when you can make that move into a space where you can identify, style stretch, and then sell to the other three buyer types that are not most like you, you're going to close a lot more business and fill way more of your calendar and make sure that people are paying the highest price because they feel that connection, that comfort, that confidence with you as the provider.
Before we move on, I want to mention our howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship page at our website. What is it? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's our mentorship page where you can book a personalized mentorship one-on-one call with myself or Nick, and we can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about for your brand, for your films, for your editing, and everywhere in between. We have limited spots available. We just opened this last week, so we want to make sure that you check it out, howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. If you feel stuck in your business, you don't know what you need to be doing to grow, and you just want somebody that's been there before to mentor you, head over right now to howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship. Now, let's get back to the episode. And I've found this, that I think a lot of people, like you said, you want to sell to people that are like you, and you think that your way is the right way. And if you take a step back and say, what am I filtering this through? This is my worldview. One thing I've noticed is sometimes whenever I I get like, they rough me up or like they make me feel uncomfortable, or I'm like, oh, I didn't like them. It's because they're a different kind of buyer type than I am. Or if like they ask questions, us wedding filmmakers, we get a little offended at questions about like, the quality of our work or the kinds of gear we're going to, or like if they question something on our contract or, which is a red flag a lot of times. But I worked with a couple 2 years ago, and the groom was very much involved when usually they're not with me, but he was very much involved, and he was an attorney, and he was very analytical, and he came across really analytical and dry. And I was like, I do not like this guy. And
what's he going to be like in front of the camera?
Right. And what ended up happening is at one point I was like, hey, I don't know if I'm the right fit for you. Like, I feel like we should maybe part ways. It's like 6 months to your wedding. Like, you keep asking me these questions. And his wife came in and was like, we love your work. He can't help himself. And after we kind of got on the same page, understanding like, oh, he's not being a jerk. He cares about this a lot. I decided, hey, yeah, we will take the wedding. We will do it. And he's one of my favorite clients we've ever done. It opened me up to somebody in this world that's so polarized and so like, well, if you're not like me, I can't accept you or whatever. Like, I have found some of my best clients that I liked working with the most, and he was great on camera, by just being like, oh, this person is just different than me and has a different worldview than me, but they want the same result as me. They want peace on the world. Maybe they want it in a different way than I would say or whatever. And I think that we can get back to that more as a society, and I won't go political, but the point that I was getting at was that like, a lot of us, our defense mechanism as wedding filmmakers is like, well, they were a jerk. They asked me about my contract, or they're like, they can't understand why their calendar's not full. And just because they're not your, like off the top, your ideal purchase or they don't feel like you, that doesn't mean that they're not actually a great client for you. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, John, because it's absolutely true. You know, when we have empathy and understanding for where people are coming from, we can appreciate that perspective and in learning about them and what's important to them. You know, I feel like there's a lot more middle ground that we can all stand on. You know, what I will say, in my experience, having worked with a lot of videographers over the years and done a lot of brand communication strategies with our copywriting and website design, is that there's a lot of analyzers who are videographers. You know, I think that it's you know, if I were to look at, you know, what swath of videographers are analyzers, it would probably be more than 50%. And you know, by far the most analytical field in the industry. And that's because it takes a lot of patience, meticulous attention to detail, technical understanding, you know, appreciation for quality, making sure that all of the, you know, the components are working together. You know, this is a very technical, analytical field. And one of the things, like, so some things about the analyzer buyer type or communication approach in this case is that, you know, there's a need for structure, a need for consistency, a need for you know, patience, seeking out of information, connecting you know, data to the bigger system. Having standard operating procedures that are out and available. And so from a sales perspective, that can be really challenging in it to somebody who is inflexible. If you have a system, if you have a CRM and a workflow and an automated, you know, sales process, which is very common for analyzers, because why not? That's the way the world should work. Then if somebody tries to change it or ask questions about it or personalize it too much, then you see it as a threat to the structure that you have that you prefer. And it means that you have to change. Change is hard for most human beings. It's like triply hard for analyzers. And so if you yourself are analytical and would, you know, type as an analyzer, then when you get some crazy dreamer that comes in and is like, whoa, I'm a square peg in a round hole and I'm going to completely jack with your sales process by listening to nothing that you tell me and just asking whatever questions I want and taking longer than you've allocated, or not paying attention to the link that you sent over to me and I called you instead, or I like to text rather than fill out your questionnaire. You know, like, those things might short circuit you as an analyzer, even though that's just them being them.
You're making me laugh because I'm just thinking of some of the people I know that like are like just twitching in their earbuds as they're listening to this, because we are, man. And I think that, you know, as we've done How to Film Weddings now for 6+7 years, something like that, you know, the people that we've had the hardest time with, or that we bug the most, or that don't, you know, are super analytical. And it's like, John is like, the fact that I shot auto white balance and was charging plus $10,000 for wedding films, people are like, that guy is not an educator, he's terrible. And it's like, no, I'm just not good at auto white balance, and that's okay right now, and I can learn that, and I have learned that since. But the point being, it's just making me giggle because it's just like, you text me and you disregarded the link, and and it's like, I'm that guy. And I think Nick is way more of an analyzer, and it's funny because he's on the nose with time zone things and the links and anyway, it made me laugh.
But I want to dig into that a little bit, because I think it's important, you know, for all of us to recognize, like, there's no good or bad. There's just how we're wired. And, you know, we all have our superpowers, and we all have our development opportunities. You know, we tend to pick partners professionally and personally that are the opposite of us. And, you know, my wife, for instance, is an analyzer and relator. I'm a boss and a dreamer. And so we are on opposite ends of the spectrum. Let's just say she's my second wife. And I've gotten a lot better at style stretching. And, you know, what I'm talking about right now with this concept of buyer types is applicable anywhere. We all have areas that we need to concede in. And I think the sooner that we recognize there's not one way to do things, and that in fact many people see things completely opposite that we do, then we become more comfortable with doing things differently. It's not an affront to who we are. It's not a challenge to our authority. It's not saying our system sucks. It's just that some people prefer to do things differently. And I think what's interesting about the people who are finding the most success are those who can stretch their styles most easily. Just as if you were a manager of people, you have to learn how to manage different people. If you are a seller of your services, you must learn how to sell to different people. It'll open up a whole different audience that's going to have a good reaction to you. So the sooner you get started on it, the more likely you are to see success. Or you just have to put out a lot of information or an approach that may get you a lot of no's. And if you are unwilling to style stretch, you now know why you're getting ghosted. It is no longer a mystery why your calendar is not full. And if you want to know why other people are booking, but you're not, when you do as good of a work as they do, it might not be the white balance. It may be your ability to communicate in a way that is not natural to you.
Yes. And I would strongly advise most of the people listening to find somebody in your corner that you trust and have them give you real self-awareness feedback on you as a person and the way that you sell and the way that you come across, because we see it a lot in different Facebook groups or whatever, just videographers that are completely unaware of how they just come off, the way that they communicate, the way that they're off-putting, and then they're making posts like, I don't have any bookings, I don't know what's wrong, my logo is good, or my website is good, and it's like, you're not seeing the whole picture here. And so, man, there's so many things we could dig into with that, but I want to shift the conversation just a little bit. I want to bring it back to, so when we hired you as John Bunn Films, and I hired you, we walked through with your team, I walked through with your team, and learned.
I like the royal we. I like that.
Yeah.
I think you deserve it.
We did.
It's your podcast. You can say whatever you want on it.
That's true. I can. It might get me in trouble. But so I hired your team. You helped really give me some self-awareness of who it is that I really want to work with. We dug deep into like my background and the kinds of weddings I loved and didn't love, and having that put together afterwards, your team put together, my ideal buyer avatar, and showed me two different people, and it was not a bride and groom, but it was actually a bride and her mother, and laid out the kind of person that mom is. And it was really freaky because it was like, you nailed it. They nailed it. And it was like, this is the type of mom that is on the call with the bride with me all the time. This is the kind of bride, this is, their vocation, down to like, and it's like said, what type of buyer type are they? Oh, she's a relator. Well, that means this. And like giving me those tools gave me like a foundation, I think, so that ever since I got that tool in 2021 until now, I filtered everything that I put out on social media. I've put everything on my website, all the copy that you guys wrote, all the blogs that are all written through that lens, that's who I'm typically aiming for. And I've said it on the podcast before, but like my website is not attractive to a lot of wedding filmmakers because I'm not aiming for wedding filmmakers to book me. And part of who I am, people that are hiring me are analyzers. Like they will do a lot of analyzing, reading every line. So there's more copy about how the experience works. There's more lines, there's more words on my website than I would have naturally said work, less is more or whatever. But we walk through, there's so much copy on my website, but what I've seen with understanding that tool is that I can apply it in different ways to my brand. For those out there that are like, okay, I can, I'm intrigued by these buyer types or these, I know who my buyer type is, or maybe they end up hiring you and, helping them find their buyer types and stuff. Practically speaking, what are maybe a few different ways to apply this to our brand today? Like what can we be looking at now and give ourselves a little self-checkup, or what kinds of things do we recommend to apply it?
Yeah, I'm all about practical application. I think it's super important. One of the simplest things you can do is look at your image selection. And I know a lot of videographers are like, "Yeah, it's about my films." It's not always about your films. Remember, it's like that's a product that you create, but there's so many other things that you need to do. And there's a lot of photos that you're going to put out on Instagram and on your website. And so photo selection is a really great way for you to make an impact knowing about buyer types. If you don't use a lot of photos in your Instagram feed, just remember the cover image that you're using for whatever clip you're putting out there. I'll give you an example. Most wedding filmmakers that I know tend to focus the cover image on a close-up of the couple getting married. That's very typical. That's great if you're a relator, but if you're a dreamer, they don't care as much about the two people connecting. What they care about is the decor, or they care about the gorgeous venue, or the fact that they're on a boat hanging out with their friends, right? Like that's what that mom and or bride wanted from your film. It wasn't the connection with like a close up of the vow exchange. I think there are things like viral videos of like the groom's response. I don't know if that's still a thing now, but it was several years ago, right? Of like the first look and the turnaround and the tear. That's great for relators, terrible for boss types. Boss types don't care about any of that. What they want to know is they want to see people dancing their faces off and getting crazy in the after hours party. And so when you're thinking about what you're sharing on social media or what you're sharing on your website with videos, but also with photos, make sure that you're picking the emotion that you think motivates your buyer. So for the relator, it's going to be meaningful connection with other people. For the boss, it's going to be dancing your faces off, or like really enjoying the food and the drink, or laughing at the toast. For the dreamer, it's going to be about design and decor, and everybody out like having a great time and swooning over the experiences. And so you can shape the content strategy that you have based around your ideal client. And that is something that when you do, you will find success. What you put out is what you'll get back. A lot of people who are looking at leveling up, for instance, going from mid-market to premium or premium into luxury, there's a general shift from relator to dreamer of an ideal client. Not always, but generally. And so they find that their old content, whether it's images or clips, have to move from people-oriented to design or decor or experience-oriented. If you want to make a move into destination, for instance, it's not about the people, it's about the place. And so you've got to shift the content to having fun in the location that they choose. Like doing a film that has a clip about going out on a catamaran could be way more impactful than a first look where the groom is now crying at how gorgeous the bride is. So really think about what you're trying to communicate with the messages that you're sending based on the photos and videos you're using.
My fingers hurt from typing so much. It really is interesting, and I think it would be fun, and this is off of script, so wish us luck. But
hit me with it, John.
I'm going to say an image that we would put out into the internet or on our website.
4-leaf clover.
Great. No, that's not how this is going to work. This is not how it works. This is my podcast. We talked about this, Sam. No, I'm going to say an image, and you're going to tell me just which buyer type you think it hits.
Ooh, I love this. This is fun. This is fun.
Okay.
Do it. Let's do it.
Okay, because I see a lot of these on different things. What about a shot of two hands and the diamond rings interlaced? No faces, just hands and rings.
All relator. All relator.
Okay, meaningful connection. What about an image of a drunken groom with sunglasses on at night doing a backflip into a pool?
Boss type, somebody who's all about celebrating life to its fullest.
What about, we've talked about this. Let me think of a different version. A photo of a couple skydiving together.
Oh man, I'm going boss type, dreamer type. I'm going both.
Okay. Let's do an easy one. What about, let's say Coldplay is singing at a wedding on a big stage.
Dreamer. All Dreamer, right? Dreamer's all about status recognition, creating FOMO, especially on Instagram.
Okay. And then what about like a beautiful checkered dance floor with $50,000 worth of flowers hanging above it, chandeliers, the stage is set, beautiful reception space.
Generally, I would say that would be a Dreamer because it's all about decor, wow-worthy moments, Instagrammable opportunities, things like that. It would definitely be a Dreamer if the couple was doing their first dance surrounded by all of their friends and family with that as the backdrop. That would for sure, that's like Dreamer on steroids. However, if you just saw a little bit of the decor and the dance floor was monogrammed, not checkered, but monogrammed with their personalized monogram, and then it was more of a close-up of just the two, and it felt like they were dancing in their big party but nobody was around, that would be all relator, those intimate moments. And you, of course, as a filmmaker can create these kinds of experiences. They're all there, just like the world exists whether you're there or not. This moment exists whether you're there or not, but with your lens you capture it in a certain way, and that's what's going to help tell the story that's going to mean the most to that couple, and then you can choose to showcase in your marketing content strategy after the fact.
I love it. I was trying to think of one, and maybe you can help think of a couple for the analyzer type. What kinds of imagery would come to your mind for analyzers?
Yeah, it's funny because we talk about this all the time with our team as we go through and help our website and copywriting clients develop, image and video selection. So analyzers are motivated by security. That's what they want more than anything. That's why they like expertise. An analyzer may want to know about your gear because they want to know that you have high quality gear because that'll reduce the risk of it being a crappy video. They want to know that like you're going to back this up 5 different ways, for instance. They want to know about your process because when they understand how something works, they can understand the quality that is put out for that. So knowing that security and reducing risk is the goal, what you can do is you can show them how things come together. So a lot of content strategy that you'd want to put out on social media would be behind the scenes. This is how it all comes together. Or you could do like a gear check, for instance. It could be, here's my wedding day workflow from very beginning to very end. I quality test my gear. I get there early. I make sure that I do, these technical requirements. Then when I'm done, do I sleep? Oh no, I don't sleep. I go and I back things up, and then I back up the backup. And then, and then I, go to the security vault and I deposit the flash drives, whatever it might be. But it's like that kind of content. I know it's not sexy, guys. I get it. I know it. But, that's the kind of material that you may not want to put in the wedding film, but we don't see a lot of ideal clients that are analyzers. Like we've done 450, 500 brand communication strategies where we've identified in depth 20 to 30 hours worth of research, like we did for your website, John, over the last 4 or 5 years. So we've done this, call it 500 times. Maybe 10% of the time will we see an ideal client that is an analyzer. However, like you said, the groom or the behind the scene decision maker, the dad, usually is going to have a little bit of that analyzer in him, which means that you can put content out there that's not maybe the main wedding film or the reel or the TikTok or the film that you're going to put on your website, but you could put some behind the scenes on your Instagram story. On your wedding day, you could put some behind the scenes on your Instagram highlights. You could also put some content, some explainer videos, or how you put things together on your proposal, so that they could click through if they wanted to drill into and analyze the information that you offer. But it's not the kind of the feature film that you're showcasing. So, at the end of the decision-making process, the single most important criteria for making the choice is going to come down to risk, not price, not how much they connected to you, not how much they love your films, but it's risk. How can you mitigate the potential for things going wrong by choosing you? And so having some video content is going to be a really powerful way for you to lower that risk and provide that reassurance for them to sign a contract and move forward with you.
Yeah. And this is all so brilliant because it's like, we're just talking we were just talking images, but like while you're talking about that, on my website, you know, there are images of me with my camera gear with couples that kind of does two things. You know, it's like the analyzer is saying, oh, that's what he looks like at a wedding. He's going to show up and wear nice clothes. Okay, his camera is nice. And then the relator is like, oh, he cares about connecting with me or whatever. And
exactly
or what,
right.
And it might, so one of the main photos on my contact page is me with a beautiful couple on the dance floor with the beautiful, it's just me and them. And it's like, you see this beautiful, luxurious event. You can see the behind the scenes of me. You can see all, like, I'm analyzer, relator, dreamer, and boss, like in one photo sometimes. But then you can layer it with your testimonials, or you can layer it with, you know, the experience page on my website has lots of details about how it is to work with me and my processes. And you can click through and see more. And so after I had those tools in place, that's what I was saying at the beginning of the hour, was everything began to change. And I have been like this student practicing and learning. And I'm digging into your podcast all the time. It's like, oh, he's talking about relators today. I want to know more about that. And you're growing and practice. It's like, you know, you're practicing, you know, as a therapist for filmmakers or a doctor. You're in your practice. And so, you know, I know the wheels are turning for a lot of people out there. I know a lot of people are like, okay, this is great. What's my next step? Where can I go for more? What's my next step? What would you say to somebody out there that maybe either wants more info from you on these topics, wants to get on your email list, wants to get connected with you? I mentioned it, but you have your podcast, the Own Your Business podcast, which is amazing. But what is the next step for people?
Yeah, I like the podcast as a first step. You know, it's a great opportunity to go through and to learn more, not just about the buyer types, which they're kind of sprinkled in over 150-ish episodes, but just to learn about, you know, anything related to sales, pricing, website, copywriting, general business strategy, those kinds of things. You know, I think another good place for people to learn about buyer types is through our masterclasses. This is something that we are just opening up late spring, early summer of 2024. I had some pre-recorded content that I know touches on a lot of different topics that I get asked to speak about on podcasts or to do training or speaking engagements on. You know, buyer types and communication is one of them. I have a masterclass that is available, and it talks about in depth the 4 different buyer types, how to identify them, and then how to change, tweak, modify, update major elements of your marketing and sales. So that's another great opportunity. You know, we have some work that can be done for you if you don't just want to learn about it, but you also want to see experts put it into practice. Obviously, you mentioned that we did work on your website for ideal client avatar and copywriting. Since then, we have added on design work. And in fact, just this morning, I saw our newest 4 templates that we've created. And interestingly, we've taken a different tact on our website templates. Instead of something that is for a videographer specifically, or a photographer, or a planner, something that is for a certain price point, whether that's premium or luxury, or even something that's like a certain style, like fine art or editorial. What we've done is we've created templates that are designed around the way that different buyer types like to browse your website. Because dreamers like few words, big graphics, big headlines, lots of images, lots of calls to action, etc. Whereas relators would be completely overwhelmed by that and would like more connection, a strong about page, more step-by-step 1, 2, 3s, lots of white space, and 100 other things that are needed to really truly frame the copy and the photos and videos that you want to share on your website. So, you know, we do website design as well as offer these templates, and visiting our Instagram account and learning more about that through our profile link, or just going straight to the website, ideactionconsulting.com, is the best way to look into that and see if it's a good fit for what you're looking to do.
I love all that. We'll obviously link those things in the show notes. It's been a very fast hour. What's interesting is that I know that you could dig into this. I mean, this is your bread and butter. You have master classes, you have retreats, you have to, like, you're doing all these different things. And for me, my brand, I wanted to say thank you, because for my brand, I'm booking clients now. I've put in the work. I'm not, but at the same time, you helped me clarify my messaging. You helped me clarify who it is that I was aiming for. And I think that when we take the approach of just the fire extinguisher, whatever, just we're aiming at anybody, we make vanilla wedding films, we make vanilla websites. It's all very just generic. And once I had those tools in place and the confidence that it gave me to know those things, that's whenever I could say I'm laser focused on this type of client. And I've watched the investment that I made into the copywriting and the avatars pay for itself 100-fold. And it's really incredible what you're doing for professionals. I know you speak at Engage and at WIPA events and all over the place. And I know you don't have to take the time to do this for little old me. And I just wanted to say thank you for giving us this information. And I know our audience is going to eat it up. So thank you so much for taking the time. Any final thoughts or words before we head out today?
Yeah, I think I love the summary that you just gave there, John, about like how it provided that clarity and understanding of what to spend your time on. Instead of the fire extinguisher, or a sprinkler to try and put it out, I would recommend a fire hose. We all have just a very limited amount of time, energy, money, and resources to put towards our business. And if you can hone in on what's most impactful and most important to your success, then you'll burn out less and feel more passionate about what it is that you're doing. If you can like what you do and work with incredible clients and get paid what it is that you feel like you deserve, amazing. Do more of that. And once you can laser in, like you said, on who you want to work with, not just people who are rich, like that's not enough of an ideal client. Like, okay, so they're wealthy and they're willing to spend a lot of money. What else about them? They trust you. Okay, great. What else about them? If you can't name 5, 6, 8 things about clients you love, I would stop moving, because you're lost with your business. And like anytime you're lost, you should not go anywhere until you figure out where you're at and where you want to go and what the route to get there is. And buyer types that we've been talking about are a great first step to creating that path and knowing what the next step forward is for you.
So good. Thank you so much for being on. Everyone, go follow this man on Instagram, reach out to him, grab his templates, do all the things. Thank you so much, Sam Jacobson, Ideaction, for being on the podcast today. All right, there you have it. We are done with today's episode. A little bit longer of an episode, but honestly, I know you are happy about it. This is information that if you apply it, it will change your business forever. And that's what we're all about over here at How to Film Weddings. Be sure to check out Sam's website, ideactionconsulting.com, and also be sure to check his podcast, the Own Your Business podcast. I listen to it every single week. Every week I'm inspired by it. He's a great friend, a great person to be following and to be learning from. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to head over to howtofilmweddings.com/outsourcing if you need help with outsourcing, and howtofilmweddings.com/mentorship if you need a mentor. That's all the plugs I have for today. That's all the info. We'll see you back here next week. Until next time, I'll see you.